Now let's begin. Matthew Malone stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing his coffee mug while his 6-year-old son, Jamie, sat at the table finishing his cereal. The Tuesday morning sun cut through the window blinds, painting stripes across the hardwood floor of their suburban Denver home. It was supposed to be an ordinary day: drop Jamie at school, head to his job as a civil engineer, maybe grab lunch with his colleague Brian. Nothing about the morning suggested his life was about to detonate. "Daddy, why does Grandma take my blood?" Matthew's hand froze mid-rinse, water still running over the mug. He turned slowly, studying his son's innocent face. Jamie swung his legs under the chair, completely casual, as if he'd asked about breakfast options. "What do you mean, buddy?" Matthew kept his voice level, but his heart had already started hammering. Jamie pushed up the sleeve of his Spider-Man pajama top and extended his small arm across the table. "She uses the needles. Like at the doctor. But she says it's our secret." The mug slipped from Matthew's grip, shattering in the sink. He barely noticed. 7 marks dotted his son's inner arm, some faded to yellow-green bruises, others fresher, purple and tender-looking. They ran in a neat line from his inner elbow down his forearm, precise and deliberate. Matthew crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, gently taking his son's arm. His hands trembled as he examined each mark. Professional puncture wounds. Someone knew what they were doing. "When did this happen, Jamie? When does Grandma do this?" "On Saturdays when I stay over." Jamie tilted his head, confused by his father's intensity. "She says I'm special. That my blood helps people. Is that bad?" Matthew pulled his son into a tight hug, his mind racing through a horrifying timeline. Every Saturday for the past 3 months, Jamie had stayed overnight at Elizabeth Sherwood's house. Constance had insisted on it, said her mother was lonely since her father died, that it gave them time alone as a couple. Matthew had thought it was strange that Elizabeth suddenly wanted so much time with Jamie after years of distant grandparenting. But Constance had been persuasive. She was always persuasive. "You did nothing wrong, buddy. Nothing at all." Matthew released him, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "Go get dressed for school, okay? I need to make a phone call." After Jamie bounded upstairs, Matthew grabbed his phone with shaking hands. He dialed Denver Children's Hospital first, where Jamie's pediatrician practiced. "This is Matthew Malone. I need to verify blood tests ordered for my son, Jamie Malone, over the past 3 months." The receptionist put him on hold. Minutes crawled by. When she returned, her answer made his blood run cold. "I'm showing no blood work ordered for Jamie since his annual physical last April, Mr. Malone. Is there a problem?" Matthew ended the call and immediately dialed Constance at her real estate office. Voicemail. He tried her cell. Voicemail again. He sent a text. Emergency. "Call me now." About Jamie. No response. He looked up the stairs where he could hear Jamie getting dressed, humming the theme song from his favorite cartoon. Something was deeply, horrifically wrong. Elizabeth Sherwood lived 20 minutes away in the affluent Cherry Creek neighborhood, in the same house where Constance had grown up. Matthew had always found his mother-in-law cold, polite but distant, the kind of woman who smiled without her eyes participating. Constance worshipped her, though, defended every criticism, insisted Elizabeth was just old-fashioned and private. Matthew called his supervisor, claimed a family emergency, and told Jamie they were taking a special day off together. 15 minutes later, they were in his truck, driving toward Cherry Creek. He dropped Jamie with Brian's wife, Sarah, who asked no questions when she saw Matthew's face. "Just watch him," Matthew had said. "Don't let anyone take him. Not anyone. I'll explain later." Now he stood on Elizabeth Sherwood's pristine front porch, the morning sun glinting off the brass door fixtures. The house was a monument to old money. 3 stories of Victorian architecture, meticulously maintained, with a garden that had won neighborhood awards. He'd been here dozens of times for holidays and dinners, smiled politely at Elizabeth's passive-aggressive comments about his career, his home, his inability to provide for Constance the way her father had. He rang the doorbell. No answer. Rang again. Nothing. Matthew tried the door. Locked. He walked around to the back, his contractor's eye automatically noting the security system's outdoor sensors. The back door was also locked, but the window to the mudroom was cracked open, Elizabeth's habit when she gardened. He pushed it wider and climbed through. The house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. "Elizabeth," he called out. No response. He climbed the stairs to the second floor, where the bedrooms were. Elizabeth's master suite was at the end of the hall, door ajar. The room was exactly as he remembered. Heavy drapes, antique furniture, the faint smell of her lavender perfume. He checked the bathroom, the sitting area. Nothing unusual. Then he saw the walk-in closet. The door was closed, which seemed odd for mid-morning. He opened it and found himself facing rows of expensive clothes, shoe racks, hat boxes. But something was off about the back wall. The spacing seemed wrong. Matthew pushed aside a section of hanging dresses and found a seam in the wallpaper. His fingers found a latch. The panel swung inward, revealing a small, climate-controlled room he'd never known existed. A medical-grade refrigerator hummed in the corner, the kind hospitals used for blood storage. Next to it sat a filing cabinet and a small desk with a laptop. Matthew's stomach turned as he approached the fridge. His hand hesitated on the handle. He opened it. Rows of blood bags lined the shelves, each carefully labeled with dates, times, and initials. His eyes caught on several marked JM, Jamie's initials. But there were others too. TD, MK, S. Different blood types listed. Different dates going back 18 months. Matthew grabbed his phone and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Matthew Malone. I'm at 4782, Claremont Street. I've found evidence of child abuse, and he looked back at the refrigerator at the dozens of blood bags. I don't know what this is. My 6-year-old son has needle marks. There's a hidden room. Medical equipment. Blood. Lots of blood. Sir, are you in danger? Is the child with you? My son is safe. He's not here. But the woman who did this, my mother-in-law, she's not here either. I broke into her house. I'm in her house right now. The words tumbled out. Please send someone. This is real. This is happening. Sir, stay where you are. Don't touch anything else. Units are being dispatched. Matthew ended the call and forced himself to look around the hidden room more carefully. The filing cabinet drawers were locked, but the desk had papers scattered across it. He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. Invoices. Names he didn't recognize. Financial statements showing deposits of $15,000, $22,000, $18,000, irregular amounts, irregular dates, going back almost 2 years. One document made him stop breathing. A contract, printed on expensive letterhead for something called Sherwood Medical Solutions, LLC. The signature at the bottom was Elizabeth's, but the co-signer line showed another name, Constance Malone. His wife's signature. Dated 6 months ago. The front door opened downstairs. Matthew heard footsteps, then Elizabeth's voice. Hello? Who's there? He stepped out of the closet into the bedroom just as Elizabeth reached the top of the stairs. She froze when she saw him, her composed mask slipping for just a moment before reassembling. Matthew, what are you doing in my home? She was dressed for lunch at the country club, cream-colored suit, pearls, hair perfectly styled. 70 years old, but carrying herself like royalty. In her hand, she held a small medical cooler, the kind used for transporting biological samples. What am I doing? Matthew's voice was dangerously quiet. What have you been doing to my son? Elizabeth's eyes flicked to the open closet, the exposed hidden room. Her expression hardened. You had no right to. Needle marks, Elizabeth. 7 of them. On a 6-year-old child. Matthew took a step toward her. I found your little operation. The blood. The files. The contracts. You don't understand. Elizabeth's voice remained calm, but her knuckles whitened around the cooler's handle. This is medical necessity. Legal medical necessity. There's nothing legal about taking blood from children without their parents' consent. From multiple children. Matthew could hear sirens in the distance, growing louder. Who are TD and MK? How many kids have you been using? Elizabeth's face transformed into something cold and reptilian. You've destroyed everything. Do you understand that? Years of work. Important work. She set the cooler down carefully on a hallway table. Constance said you were too stupid to notice. I told her you were a risk. The sirens were very close now. Matthew heard car doors slamming outside. Constance knew. He already knew the answer from the contract. But hearing Elizabeth confirm it was a fresh knife wound. Of course she knew. Who do you think helped me find the clients? Elizabeth smiled, and it was the most terrible thing Matthew had ever seen. The house you live in, Matthew? The renovations you thought her real estate commissions paid for? That car she drives? That's my work. Our work. And you're too much of a bleeding heart to. Police. We're coming in. Elizabeth's smile vanished. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you've done. The people I work with are going to prison, Matthew finished. Right along with you. Officers pounded up the stairs. Matthew raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. I'm the one who called. Matthew Malone. The evidence is in there. He pointed to the hidden room. And she just arrived with more. He indicated the medical cooler. The next hours blurred together. Police securing the scene. Detectives asking questions. Crime scene techs photographing everything. Matthew gave his statement 3 times, showed them the pictures on his phone, explained about Jamie's needle marks. They seized Elizabeth's laptop, the files, every blood bag in the refrigerator. Elizabeth said nothing, sitting in the back of a police car with her hands cuffed, staring straight ahead like a statue. By the time Matthew was allowed to leave, it was nearly evening. His phone had 17 missed calls from Constance. He listened to the voicemails in his truck, hands gripping the steering wheel. The first few were confused. Matt, what's going on? The police called me. What emergency? Then angry. Answer your fucking phone. What did you do? Why are the police at my mother's house? The last one, received 20 minutes ago. Matthew, please. I can explain everything. It's not what it looks like. Just come home. We can talk about this. I love you. Jamie needs both his parents. Don't do anything crazy. Matthew deleted them all and drove to Brian's house to pick up his son. Brian met him at the door, concern written across his face. Matt, Sarah told me something was wrong. What's happening? I'll tell you everything, Matthew said. But first, I need to see Jamie. His son was in the living room, building with blocks, completely unaware that his world had just imploded. When he saw Matthew, he jumped up and ran over. Daddy, can I stay for dinner? Sarah makes good pizza. Matthew knelt down and held his boy close. Not tonight, buddy. We're going somewhere else. Just you and me. As he carried his son to the truck, Matthew made a decision. He wasn't going home. He wasn't answering Constance's calls. He was taking Jamie somewhere safe, and then he was going to find out exactly how deep this conspiracy went. Because Elizabeth's words kept echoing in his mind. The people I work with. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The hotel room was cheap but clean, a budget place near the airport where they took cash and didn't ask questions. Jamie was asleep in one bed, exhausted from the emotional day, while Matthew sat at the small desk with his laptop, going through everything he'd photographed at Elizabeth's house. He'd stopped at an office supply store on the way, printed everything, and now had the photos spread across the desk like pieces of a puzzle. Client names, payment amounts, dates, and at the center of it all, that contract with Constance's signature. His phone buzzed. Constance again. He let it go to voicemail. The door clicked open. He'd left it on the latch for Brian, who'd agreed to bring them food and some clothes. His friend slipped in carrying plastic bags, eyebrows raised at the papers everywhere. You want to tell me what's going on, Matt? Because Sarah's worried. I'm worried. And you look like you haven't slept in a week. Matthew gestured at the desk. My mother-in-law has been extracting blood from my son. From multiple children. Selling it. And my wife knew about it. Brian set the bags down slowly, staring at the evidence. Jesus Christ. I found a hidden room in Elizabeth's house. Medical equipment, refrigerated blood bags, financial records showing hundreds of thousands of dollars in payments. Matthew rubbed his eyes. The police arrested Elizabeth, but Constance wasn't there. They haven't picked her up yet. What do you need? Brian asked simply. That was what Matthew appreciated about him. No drama, no judgment, just solid friendship. I need to know who these people are. Matthew tapped one of the client names. The police are moving, but it's going to take time. Warrants, legal procedures. And Elizabeth said something before they arrested her. She said the people she works with would make me regret this. Brian leaned over the desk, studying the documents. He worked in tech security, had contacts Matthew didn't. These payment amounts are specific. Let me see if I can trace them through financial databases. If this is organized, there'll be a trail. While Brian worked on his laptop, Matthew's phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Mr. Malone? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. This is Detective Sarah Chun with Denver PD. We need you to come in for a follow-up interview tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. And we need to examine your son. Are you still in the area? Yes. We're safe. What's happened? We've made additional arrests. 2 nurses at Denver General, 1 private physician. They were part of the network. We found records indicating at least 12 children over the past 18 months. Detective Chin paused. Mr. Malone, we also have a warrant for your wife's arrest. Do you know where she is? Matthew looked over at Jamie, sleeping peacefully. No. She's been calling me, but I haven't answered. Don't. If she contacts you, let us know immediately. We believe she handled the client acquisition and payments. This wasn't just about your son. This was a sophisticated operation targeting children with rare blood types. After the call ended, Matthew felt hollow. 12 children. 18 months. And Constance had been part of it all along. How many family dinners had they sat through while she was planning this? How many times had she kissed Jamie goodnight before sending him to Elizabeth's house to be used as a blood bank? Matt. Brian's voice was tight. You need to see this. He'd pulled up financial records, traced one of the payment names. This client? Marcus Webb? He's CEO of Biolux Therapeutics. They specialize in experimental treatments for blood disorders. The kind of treatments that aren't FDA approved. The kind that desperate wealthy people pay hundreds of thousands for. Matthew studied the screen. Elizabeth was supplying blood for illegal medical treatments. Looks like it. And if this Webb guy is involved, there are probably others. Rich people who'll pay anything for treatments that might save their lives or their family members. Brian pulled up more records. These dates match up with Biolux treatment cycles. She wasn't just randomly selling blood. She was supplying an ongoing medical operation. The implications crystallized in Matthew's mind. This wasn't just child abuse. It was organized medical fraud, probably involving millions of dollars. And somewhere in this network were powerful people who would do anything to keep it hidden. His phone buzzed with a text from Constance. Please, Matthew. I'm sorry. I didn't want this. She made me help her. I was scared. Please don't take Jamie from me. I'm his mother. Matthew stared at the message, anger rising like bile. She'd helped harvest their son's blood. She'd profited from it. And now she wanted sympathy? He typed back. You're not his mother. You're his abuser. Don't contact me again. Then he blocked her number and looked at Brian. I need you to help me find everyone involved in this. Not just the people the police know about. Everyone. The clients, the facilitators, whoever helped Elizabeth set this up. Matt, the police are handling it. The police are bound by rules. Legal procedures. I'm not. Matthew's voice was cold and clear. These people used my son. They used him like he was a commodity. And I'm going to make sure every single one of them pays for it. Brian studied his friend's face and seemed to recognize something there. All right, but we do this smart. No half measures. Nothing that comes back on you or Jamie. Agreed. They worked through the night, building a database of names and connections. By morning, Matthew had a list of 17 people potentially involved in the network. Doctors, nurses, wealthy clients, facilitators. Elizabeth and Constance were just the beginning. At 7 a.m., Matthew's phone rang with a call from Detective Chun. Mr. Malone, we've arrested your wife. She's refusing to cooperate. Says she wants to make a statement with her lawyer present. Good. There's something else. We searched her office and found communications with a lawyer named Philip Wolf. He represents several of the clients. We think he was helping structure the payments to look legitimate. But he's disappeared. We issued a warrant, but he's in the wind. Matthew made a note of the name. Philip Wolf. He'd find him. After hanging up, he looked at Jamie, still sleeping soundly. His son would need therapy. Medical evaluation. Years of healing from this trauma. But first, Matthew needed to ensure the people responsible couldn't hurt anyone else. He'd trusted the police to do their jobs. But he was going to do his own job too. And his job was to be a father. To protect his son. To make sure justice, real justice, was served. Even if he had to deliver it himself. 3 days later, Matthew sat in a lawyer's office downtown, finalizing emergency custody paperwork. Constance's arraignment had been quick. Bail set at $500,000, which she couldn't make. Elizabeth had gotten $750,000. Both were in county jail, awaiting trial. The police had arrested 9 people total, and the investigation was expanding. But Matthew's private investigation was moving faster. Brian had hacked into Biolux Therapeutics' patient database. Technically illegal, but Matthew didn't care anymore about technicalities. They'd found 12 clients who'd received treatments using blood matching Jamie's rare AB-negative type. Wealthy people from across the country, even internationally. People who'd paid between $50,000 and $200,000 per treatment. One name jumped out, Senator Howard Brennan. His daughter had received 3 treatments in the past 6 months. Matthew recognized the name. Brennan was known for family values campaigns, anti-crime platforms, and he'd been paying Elizabeth's network to extract blood from children. Matthew's phone rang. Detective Chun. Mr. Malone, I wanted to update you. The DA is building cases against all 9 suspects. But I need to warn you about something. She paused. We've received threats. Anonymous calls warning us to drop the investigation. Legal pressure from expensive lawyers. This network is connected to powerful people, and they're fighting back. Are you dropping it? Hell no. But I wanted you to be aware. These people will come after you too. You're the one who discovered everything. They'll try to discredit you, intimidate you, maybe worse. Let them try. After the call, Matthew met Brian at a coffee shop far from downtown. His friend looked exhausted. He'd been working double shifts to help with the investigation while maintaining his day job. I found something, Brian said, sliding a folder across the table. Remember Philip Wolf, the lawyer who disappeared? He didn't disappear. He went to a private clinic in Mexico. But before he left, he emptied 3 trust accounts, money that belonged to the network's operating fund. Matthew opened the folder. Bank statements, travel records, property deeds. How much? $2.3 million. He stole from his own clients and ran. Where in Mexico? Puerto Vallarta. He bought a villa under a shell company. Brian hesitated. Matt, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that Philip Wolf knows everything about this network. Client names, payment structures, who else is involved. And I'm thinking he stole from dangerous people, which means he's vulnerable. You can't go to Mexico and watch me. Matthew returned to the hotel where he and Jamie were staying. His son was with Sarah again. She'd been a godsend, watching Jamie while Matthew dealt with the nightmare. He packed a small bag, made arrangements for extended childcare, and booked a flight to Puerto Vallarta for the next morning. That night, he received an email from an unknown address. No subject line. The message was simple. Stop the investigation or your son will suffer more than needle marks. Matthew stared at the screen, rage boiling through him. They were threatening Jamie. After everything they'd done, they had the audacity to threaten his son. He forwarded the email to Detective Chun, then wrote back, "Touch my son, and I'll burn your entire world down. Try me." The response came within minutes. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Matthew replied, "Neither do you." He closed the laptop and checked his bag. He'd packed light: clothes, laptop, cash, and a few items Brian had provided that weren't exactly legal. If Philip Wolf thought he could hide in Mexico while children suffered, he was about to learn otherwise. Matthew's phone buzzed with a text from Brian. Coordinates for Wolf's villa. Security system specs. Guard rotation schedule. Be careful. Another text followed. This is crazy, you know that, right? Matthew smiled grimly and typed back. They made it crazy when they hurt my son. At 3 a.m., he kissed Jamie's forehead. His son was sleeping peacefully at Brian's house now, safer than anywhere else. Sarah had agreed to watch him for a week, no questions asked. I'll be back soon, buddy, Matthew whispered. And when I come back, everyone who hurt you will have paid for it. I promise. As he drove to the airport, Matthew thought about the man he'd been a week ago. A civil engineer. A regular guy who went to work, paid his bills, loved his wife and son. That man was gone, burned away by the discovery of what had been done to Jamie. The man who boarded the flight to Puerto Vallarta was someone different. Someone harder. Someone who understood that the legal system, for all its procedures and rules, couldn't deliver the kind of justice that was needed here. Someone who was willing to cross lines he'd never imagined crossing. The plane lifted off into the pre-dawn darkness, and Matthew settled into his seat, reviewing everything he knew about Philip Wolf. The lawyer was 53, divorced, no children. He'd made his career representing wealthy clients in medical malpractice cases, which was probably how he'd connected with Elizabeth's network. He was smart, careful, and now a thief who'd betrayed dangerous people, which made him exactly the kind of person who might be willing to talk, given the right motivation. As the sun rose over the Gulf of Mexico, painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink, Matthew felt something settle inside him. Clarity. Purpose. He wasn't a lawyer or a cop, bound by ethics and procedure. He was a father, and fathers protected their children by any means necessary. Philip Wolf was about to learn what that meant. Puerto Vallarta was bright and warm, a stark contrast to Denver's autumn chill. Matthew rented a car and drove to a beachside hotel, checking in under a fake name Brian had helped him create. The villa where Wolf was hiding sat in the hills overlooking the bay, a modern concrete and glass structure surrounded by high walls. Matthew spent the first day surveilling the property, noting patterns. Wolf had 2 guards, local muscle, probably hired through connections rather than any legitimate security firm. They rotated shifts, with one always at the main gate and one roaming the grounds. Wolf himself appeared on the terrace around sunset, drinking expensive scotch and staring at the ocean. On the second day, Matthew made contact with a local named Ernesto Sherman who Brian had connected him with, a fixer who handled problems for expats. Ernesto was small and wiry, with intelligent eyes and a network of people who owed him favors. "Your lawyer friend, he makes enemies here already," Ernesto said over lunch at a beachside cafe. "He owes money to the wrong people. Gambling debts. The Sinaloa boys are asking questions about him. How much does he owe? Maybe $200,000. He thinks because he has money in banks, he's safe. But these people, they don't care about banks." Matthew smiled. What if someone paid his debt? Made it go away? Ernesto studied him carefully. What would someone want in return? Access to the villa. 1 hour, no interruptions. And the guards looked the other way. That's all. That's all. Ernesto named a price. Matthew paid it in cash, plus an extra $20,000 for discretion. They shook hands, and Ernesto made some calls. By that evening, everything was arranged. At midnight, Matthew approached the villa's back gate. It swung open silently, and both guards were conspicuously absent. He moved through the darkened garden, the sound of the ocean masking his footsteps. The back door was unlocked. Matthew slipped inside and found Philip Wolf in his study, working on a laptop. The lawyer looked up, startled, reaching for a desk drawer, probably where he kept a gun. "Don't," Matthew said quietly, showing his own weapon, a Glock 19 that Ernesto had provided. "Put your hands on the desk." Wolf complied, his face going pale. He was thin and sharp-featured, with graying hair and expensive glasses. "Who are you? If this is about the money, I can. I'm Matthew Malone. Your network extracted blood from my 6-year-old son. Multiple times." Wolf's expression shifted from fear to calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Elizabeth Sherwood. Constance Malone. BioLux Therapeutics. The 12 children you helped exploit." Matthew moved closer, the gun steady in his hand. "You structured the payments. You helped hide the money. And then you stole from them and ran. You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove anything to a jury. I'm not a cop." Matthew sat down across from him, the gun resting on his knee. "You're going to tell me everything. Every client name, every payment, every person involved in the network. You're going to give me access to all the files you have. And if I don't, then I leave, and in about 20 minutes, some very angry Sinaloa cartel members show up asking about their $200,000. Members who don't appreciate being stolen from." Wolf's face went from pale to ashen. "You paid my debt. I bought an hour of your time. What you do with it is up to you. But I'd suggest you spend it cooperating, because those guys are much less reasonable than I am." For a long moment, Wolf said nothing. Then he laughed bitterly. "You know what the worst part is? I knew this would end badly. I told Elizabeth we were moving too fast, taking too many risks. But she was greedy. And your wife." He shook his head. "Constance was worse than her mother. At least Elizabeth believed she was doing something medically important. Constance just wanted money." "Start talking," Matthew said. "Names. All of them." Wolf opened his laptop and pulled up encrypted files. "There are 23 clients total. 17 in the US, 6 international. Most have rare blood disorders or family members who do. They pay for experimental treatments using fresh blood from compatible donors. Children, because their blood is cleanest, least contaminated by medications or lifestyle factors." "How did you find the children?" Elizabeth had connections through hospitals, clinics. She'd identify children with rare blood types during routine care, then approach the families, usually single parents or struggling families. Offer money for blood donations. Some parents agreed. Others, he pulled up more files. Others didn't know. We'd take the blood during other procedures, during school nurse visits Elizabeth arranged, during sports physicals. Matthew felt sick. How many children didn't have parental consent? All of them, eventually. Even the ones whose parents initially agreed. We were taking far more than was safe or legal. Jamie was one of the favorites. AB negative, perfectly healthy, mother who helped cover it up. Give me the client list. Wolf transferred files to a USB drive. This is everything. Clients, payments, medical records, treatment protocols. If this gets out, it'll destroy dozens of wealthy families. Politicians, tech CEOs, entertainment executives. People with the resources to make problems disappear. Good. You don't understand what you're dealing with. These aren't just rich people, they're connected. They have private security, political influence, legal teams that will bury you. Matthew took the USB drive. They hurt my son. I don't care how connected they are. They'll kill you. They can try. Matthew stood, keeping the gun trained on Wolf. You're going to write a full confession. Everything you just told me, signed and notarized. Then you're going to send it to the FBI, the Denver DA, and 3 news organizations. That's suicide. The network will. The network is already collapsing. Elizabeth and Constance are in jail. The police have 9 arrests. Your confession will be the nail in the coffin. Matthew moved to the desk. Write it now, or I walk out and let the Sinaloa boys in. Wolf's hands trembled as he opened a Word document and began typing. Matthew watched him work, occasionally correcting details or demanding additional information. An hour later, they had a 10-page confession detailing the entire operation. Now what? Wolf asked. Now you run farther. Somewhere these people can't find you. Because when this confession hits tomorrow, everyone involved is going to be looking for you. Matthew left the villa the same way he'd entered, the USB drive and signed confession secure in his jacket. As he drove back to his hotel, he called Brian. I've got everything. Names, payments, medical records, a full confession from Philip Wolf. Jesus, what are you going to do with it? Tomorrow morning, it goes to the FBI field office in Denver, the district attorney, the Denver Post, the New York Times, and 60 Minutes. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what these people did. Matt, these are powerful people. They'll come after you. Let them. I've got evidence that'll destroy their lives. If they touch me or Jamie, it all goes public immediately. That's mutually assured destruction. Exactly. Matthew spent the rest of the night in his hotel room, organizing the files, creating redundant backups, preparing distribution packages. At dawn, he sent everything, then booked the first flight back to Denver. By the time his plane landed that afternoon, the story was breaking. The Denver Post's headline, Wealthy Elite Exploited Children for Black Market Blood Treatments. The New York Times, Multi-state child abuse ring supplied blood for experimental medicine. Matthew's phone exploded with calls from reporters, lawyers, even threats from unknown numbers. He ignored them all and drove straight to Brian's house to see Jamie. His son ran into his arms, innocent and beautiful and alive. Daddy, you're back. I'm back, buddy. And I'm never leaving you again. That night, after Jamie was asleep, Matthew watched the news coverage. Senator Brennan had resigned. 3 BioLux Therapeutics executives were arrested. The FBI announced a nationwide investigation. Elizabeth and Constance's bail had been revoked. They were flight risks now that the full scope was public. Brian sat down beside him. You did it. You brought them all down. Not yet, Matthew said. The trials haven't happened. And there are still people from the client list who haven't been arrested. The FBI will get them. Maybe. Matthew pulled up the client list on his laptop. But I'm going to make sure. Every single one of these people is going to pay. Over the next weeks, Matthew became a one-man crusade. He provided evidence to investigators, gave interviews to journalists, connected families of other victims. He hired a lawyer named Tom Weaver, aggressive, brilliant, and hungry for justice, to file civil suits against everyone involved. The network crumbled. Doctors lost their licenses. Wealthy clients faced charges. BioLux Therapeutics declared bankruptcy. Philip Wolf's confession, combined with the documentary evidence, made prosecution inevitable. But there were threats too. Anonymous calls. Strange cars watching Matthew's new apartment. An attempted break-in that failed only because he'd installed military-grade security. Someone sent Jamie a package at school. Security intercepted it before delivery. Inside was a bloody teddy bear with a note. Stop talking. Matthew sent the note to the FBI and didn't stop talking. Instead, he talked louder. Appeared on national news. Testified before a congressional committee about child exploitation. became the face of the investigation. And slowly, methodically, he made each person responsible pay. The preliminary hearing for Elizabeth and Constance happened on a cold November morning. Matthew sat in the courtroom, Jamie safe at home with Sarah, and watched as his mother-in-law and ex-wife were led in wearing orange jumpsuits. Constance looked broken, her hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes. She scanned the courtroom until she found Matthew, and her face crumpled. She mouthed something, maybe, "I'm sorry," or "please," but Matthew's expression didn't change. Elizabeth, by contrast, looked defiant. Even in jail clothes, she maintained her imperious bearing, refusing to show weakness. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Mandy Green, presented the evidence methodically. 12 child victims, 18 months of abuse, $4.2 million in illegal payments, a network spanning 8 states. Medical experts testified about the danger of repeated blood extraction from children. Parents of other victims gave tearful testimony. When it was Matthew's turn, he spoke clearly and without emotion about finding the needle marks, discovering the hidden room, calling 911. He didn't need to be dramatic. The facts were damning enough. Defense lawyers tried to paint Elizabeth as a misguided medical pioneer, Constance as a manipulated daughter. The judge wasn't buying it. Both were held over for trial. Bail remained revoked. As they were let out, Elizabeth turned to Matthew. "This isn't over," she said loudly enough for the courtroom to hear. "You've destroyed your own family. Jamie will grow up knowing his mother is in prison because of you." "Jamie will grow up knowing I protected him from monsters," Matthew replied. "That's all that matters." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Matthew had become practiced at handling them. He gave a brief statement emphasizing the other victims, the ongoing FBI investigation, the need for stronger child protection laws. A woman approached as the crowd dispersed, late 30s, exhausted looking, with a young girl holding her hand. "Mr. Malone? I'm Christine Fleming. My daughter, she was one of the victims. TD on the labels." Matthew knelt to the girl's level. She was maybe 7, with sad eyes. "Hi there. What's your name?" "Tessa," she whispered. "Tessa, you're very brave. You know that?" The girl nodded slightly. Christine's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to thank you. We didn't know what was happening. Elizabeth approached us at a clinic, said she worked with Children's Hospital, needed blood samples for a study. We trusted her. She seemed so legitimate. It's not your fault. I know. But still." Christine wiped her eyes. "The lawyer you hired, Tom Weaver, he called me. Said you're filing a civil suit against everyone involved. He said we could join." "Absolutely. There are 11 families total. We're going to make sure every person and organization that enabled this pays damages. We don't have money for lawyers. Tom's working pro bono. Any settlements or judgments will be split among the victim families." Matthew stood. "These people hurt our children. They're going to pay for it. All of it." Over the following months, the civil suits progressed alongside the criminal cases. Matthew coordinated the victim families, provided evidence, connected them with resources. He'd become something of an expert on medical exploitation of minors, testifying before lawmakers, consulting with children's advocacy groups, giving interviews about warning signs. His life had transformed entirely. He'd quit his engineering job, couldn't focus on blueprints when children were still at risk. Instead, he worked full-time on the cases, funded by a legal defense fund that had raised $300,000 from public donations. Jamie was in therapy twice a week, slowly processing what had happened to him. Some days were hard. Nightmares, anxiety about doctors, questions about why mommy and grandma had hurt him. But he was resilient, surrounded by love and support. In December, the first trial began. Not Elizabeth or Constance. They'd take longer. First up was Rose Gibson, a nurse who'd helped extract blood from children at her clinic. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Matthew was there when the verdict was read. Rose Gibson's face crumpled as reality set in. 15 to 25 years in prison. She'd cooperated with investigators, testified against others, but that only reduced her sentence slightly. She'd still participated in harming children for money. The second trial was for Marcus Webb, the BioLux Therapeutics CEO. His lawyers were expensive and aggressive, trying to argue he didn't know the blood was obtained illegally. But Philip Wolf's confession and internal BioLux emails destroyed that defense. Guilty. 20 years. One by one, the dominoes fell. Doctors, nurses, facilitators, clients who'd knowingly used blood obtained from children. Some pleaded guilty. Others fought and lost. By spring, 17 people had been convicted, with more trials pending. Senator Brennan took a plea deal rather than face trial. 10 years for conspiracy and child endangerment. His political career was over, his reputation destroyed. And through it all, Matthew kept pushing. Finding new evidence, connecting new dots, ensuring no one slipped through the cracks. Elizabeth's trial was scheduled for May. Constance's for June. Matthew was ready for both. But something was bothering him. Despite all the arrests, all the convictions, he had the nagging feeling that someone was missing. The network had been sophisticated, well-funded, carefully organized. Elizabeth and Philip Wolfe had the medical and legal expertise, but who had the connections? Who had brought in clients like Senator Brennan and international buyers? Matthew spent a weekend reviewing all the evidence again, looking for patterns. And then he found it. Buried in the financial records was a series of payments to a consulting firm called Clearwater Advisory Services. The firm had been paid $50,000 monthly for 18 months. He researched Clearwater. It was a shell company, but the registration documents listed a managing partner, Byron Watkins. Matthew's blood ran cold. Byron Watkins was a prominent Denver attorney and political consultant. He'd helped elect governors, senators, ran in the same circles as people like Senator Brennan. He was also, Matthew realized with growing horror, the attorney who'd helped him and Constance buy their house 6 years ago. Byron had known them, had access to their information, had probably identified Jamie as a potential source early on. Matthew called Detective Chun. I found someone we missed. Byron Watkins. He was the connector, the one who brought in the wealthy clients. We've been looking at him, Chun admitted. But he's got powerful friends protecting him. The DA is being pressured not to prosecute. What? Watkins knows too many secrets about too many powerful people. If he goes down, he'll take others with him. So they're trying to make him untouchable. Matthew felt rage building. After everything we've exposed, they're still protecting one of them? I'm sorry, Mr. Malone. Politics is ugly. Not as ugly as what they did to children. Matthew hung up and called Tom Weaver. We need to add Byron Watkins to the civil suits. All of them. Matt, Watkins has serious legal firepower. Going after him could jeopardize the other cases. I don't care. He helped set up the network. He brought in clients. He profited from hurting children. He doesn't get to walk away clean. Tom sighed. All right, but we do this carefully. Watkins won't go down easy. He was right. When they filed the civil suit naming Byron Watkins as a co-defendant, his lawyers immediately fought back with motions to dismiss, claims of defamation, threats of countersuits. The legal battle became vicious. But Matthew had evidence. Philip Wolfe's files showed Watkins's involvement. Financial records proved the payments. And when Tom deposed 3 of the convicted clients, they confirmed that Watkins had been their contact point. The pressure built. News outlets began reporting on Watkins's connection to the network. His political clients started quietly distancing themselves. His law firm asked him to take a leave of absence. Then, 2 weeks before Elizabeth's trial, Byron Watkins was found dead in his home office. Single gunshot wound to the head. Staged to look like suicide, but investigators found inconsistencies. Someone had killed him and tried to make it look self-inflicted. Matthew heard the news and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just cold acknowledgement. Someone else in the network had decided Watkins was too much of a liability. Or maybe one of his powerful friends had tied up a loose end. Detective Chin called him. We're investigating it as a homicide. But between you and me, the list of people who wanted Watkins dead is very long. Did you find anything at his office? Files. Lots of them. Names of people we hadn't connected to the network yet. Watkins kept insurance files on everyone he dealt with. He was going to cut a deal with the DA, but someone got to him first. The files became key evidence in subsequent prosecutions. 5 more arrests, including 2 prominent doctors and a pharmaceutical executive. The network kept unraveling, each thread leading to another. Elizabeth's trial began in a media circus. National networks covered it live. Matthew sat in the front row every day, letting Elizabeth see his face, reminding her why she was there. The prosecution was devastating. They had everything: physical evidence, financial records, victim testimony, expert witnesses. Elizabeth's lawyers tried to paint her as a dedicated medical professional who'd made poor choices, but the jury saw through it. During cross-examination, Elizabeth finally broke. "I was helping people," she shouted at the prosecutor. "Children's blood is wasted in their bodies. Better to use it for people who need it." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel, and Matthew watched his mother-in-law reveal her true nature to the world, a narcissist who saw children as resources to be exploited. Guilty on all counts. 25 to life. Constance's trial was harder. Despite everything, Matthew had once loved her, had built a life with her, had trusted her completely. Her defense was that Elizabeth had manipulated her, coerced her participation, that she'd been a victim too. But the evidence showed otherwise. Constance had recruited clients, structured payments, actively participated for months while lying to Matthew's face. When Constance took the stand, she tried to appeal to the jury's sympathy, talked about growing up with Elizabeth's impossible standards, feeling pressured to succeed, being drawn into something she didn't fully understand. Then the prosecutor asked, "When did you first know that blood was being taken from your own son without his father's knowledge?" Constance hesitated. Elizabeth said it was safe, that he wouldn't remember. That wasn't the question. "When did you first know?" About 4 months after it started." "For months. And in those 4 months, how many times was blood extracted from Jamie?" "I don't know exactly. The medical records show 17 extractions. 17 times you knew your 6-year-old son was being used as a blood bank, and you said nothing to his father." "What?" Constance's composure cracked. "Because we needed the money. Do you know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck? To drive a used car while your friends have Mercedes?" Matthew's salary wasn't enough. It was never enough. The courtroom went silent. Constance had just admitted she'd sacrificed her son for money and status. Matthew felt something break inside him, the last remnant of the love he'd once felt for her. She wasn't a victim. She was just greedy and selfish and willing to hurt their child for nicer things. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. 15 to 25 years. As Constance was let out, she looked at Matthew one last time. "I'm sorry," she said. "I loved you. I loved Jamie." "You don't know what love is," Matthew replied. "Love protects. What you did was betray us in the worst possible way." The civil trials concluded that summer. In total, the victim families won $47 million in judgments and settlements from the convicted criminals, Biolux Therapeutics, the clinics and hospitals that had been negligent, and various enabling organizations. Jamie's share was $8 million, placed in a trust for his education and future care. The other families received similar amounts. But money couldn't undo the trauma, couldn't erase the nightmares or the therapy sessions or the years of healing ahead. On a warm September evening, exactly 1 year after Matthew first saw the needle marks on his son's arm, he sat on the back porch of their new house watching Jamie play in the yard. They'd moved to a different neighborhood, started fresh, built new routines. Jamie was thriving, still in therapy, still processing, but laughing more, sleeping better, trusting again. He'd made friends at his new school, joined a soccer team, started to be a kid again. Brian walked around from the front yard, carrying a 6-pack of beer. "Thought you might want company." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Jamie chase fireflies. "I got an email today," Matthew said. "From Christine Fleming. Tessa's doing better. Started ballet classes. Having fewer nightmares. That's good. There's going to be a survivors support group starting next month. For the families. I'm thinking of taking Jamie." Brian nodded. "Probably healthy. Let him know he's not alone in this." "Yeah." Matthew took a drink. Detective Chin called too. They traced Byron Watkins's murder. It was Marcus Webb's brother, trying to stop Watkins from testifying. He's been arrested. So everyone's accounted for? Everyone we know about. There might be others, smaller players, but the major network is destroyed. They sat quietly, the evening darkening around them. Matthew thought about the past year, the investigation, the arrests, the trials, the endless media coverage. He'd become a public figure, an advocate, someone parents recognized and thanked in grocery stores. But more than that, he'd become a father who'd fought for his son, who'd stood up to powerful people and refused to back down, who'd made sure that everyone who'd harmed Jamie faced consequences. "Do you have regrets?" Brian asked. "About going after them so hard?" Matthew considered the question. He'd made enemies, received threats, spent a year of his life consumed by the pursuit of justice. Probably shortened his lifespan from stress. No, he said finally. They hurt my son. Nothing I did to them comes close to what they deserved. Jamie ran over, breathless and grinning. Daddy, did you see? I caught 3 fireflies. I saw, buddy. That's amazing. Can we have s'mores? Absolutely. Go tell Sarah to bring out the marshmallows. Jamie ran inside, still full of energy despite the late hour. Matthew watched him go, overwhelmed with gratitude that his son had survived this, was healing, was still capable of joy. His phone buzzed with a message from Tom Weaver. Final settlement came through. Judge approved all the trust funds. Your part is done. Matthew deleted the message and set his phone aside. His part wasn't done. He'd be supporting Jamie through years of recovery, testifying at parole hearings to keep the convicted criminals locked up, continuing to advocate for stronger child protection laws. But the immediate battle was over. The network was destroyed. The perpetrators were imprisoned. Justice, as much as justice was possible in an imperfect world, had been served. You did good, Matt, Brian said quietly. Not many people would have fought like you did. Anyone would have done the same for their kid. No, they wouldn't. Most people would have let the system handle it, trusted the police and lawyers and judges. You didn't just let the system work. You made it work. You made sure no one slipped through the cracks. Matthew thought about Philip Wolfe in Puerto Vallarta, the confession he'd extracted, the evidence he'd gathered that the police never would have found. He thought about tracking down Byron Watkins when others wanted to let him hide. He thought about the relentless pressure he'd applied to prosecutors, media, politicians, until the whole rotten network collapsed. They hurt my son, he said simply. I was never going to let them get away with it. Sarah came out with marshmallows and chocolate, and Jamie helped set up the small fire pit. As they roasted marshmallows under the stars, Matthew felt something he hadn't felt in a year. Peace. Not happiness. That would take time. Not closure. Some wounds never fully close. But peace in knowing he'd done everything possible to protect his child and punish those who'd harmed him. Elizabeth would spend the rest of her life in prison. So would most of her network. Constance would be eligible for parole in 15 years, but Matthew would be at every hearing, ensuring she stayed locked up as long as possible. The wealthy clients who'd exploited children had lost their reputations, their careers, their freedom. And Jamie was safe, loved, healing. In the end, that was all that mattered. As the evening wore on and Jamie finally fell asleep on the porch swing, Brian helped carry him inside and up to bed. Matthew tucked his son in, kissed his forehead, and whispered, I've got you, buddy. Always. Downstairs, he found a letter that had arrived in the afternoon mail. From Constance, sent from prison. He almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of him. Matthew, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to, but I need you to know that I think about what I did every day. Every single day. I see Jamie's face, remember him asking about the needles, and I want to die from the shame. My lawyer says I'll be eligible for parole in 15 years. I'm not going to apply. I don't deserve to be free. What I did to our son, there's no punishment severe enough. Please tell Jamie, when he's older, that I'm sorry, that I was sick and selfish and weak, that he deserved better, that you deserve better. I'm glad he has you. You're the father I always knew you'd be, the father I should have protected instead of betrayed. I hope someday, somehow, you can find peace. You and Jamie both. Constance. Matthew read the letter twice, then fed it to the fireplace flames. Maybe Constance was genuinely remorseful. Maybe she'd spend the rest of her life regretting her choices. It didn't matter. She'd made her decisions, and now she lived with the consequences. Just like Elizabeth, who'd built a network of child exploitation and now rotted in a maximum security prison. Just like all of them. Matthew returned to the porch and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there were probably other networks, other predators exploiting vulnerable children. The fight wasn't over, would never truly be over. But tonight, in this moment, his son slept safely upstairs. The people who'd hurt him were in cages. And Matthew Malone, the civil engineer who'd become an avenging father, could finally rest. He'd won. Not just in court, but in the way that mattered most. Jamie was safe, the guilty were punished, and justice, real, earned, hard-fought justice, had been served. And that, Matthew thought as he sat in the darkness, was enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.